Hi, welcome to the thesis statement workshop. I wanted to talk to you today about thesis statements and how to avoid the stress that can sometimes come up with that term thesis statement, and how to feel confident about writing thesis statements, and also how they can even be fun. So, first of all, I wanted to talk about when you get, your assignment for the paper, and the instructor says, and you need a good thesis statement. Sometimes I know that just that feeling that students can get can be very one of a great deal of stress, right? So I'm hoping to remove some of the stress with that so that you can understand the importance of the thesis statement, really understand, have a good knowledge of what it is, how to write one, and and how they can be fun. All right, so to kick it off, for your essay, you do need to have what can be termed a working thesis statement. So sometimes when we hear something like that, we might think, well, does that mean a thesis statement that works, that's effective? Which is, that could be good, right? But in this case, it just means that you have a thesis statement that is what you are working with. And it means that it doesn't have to be perfect, in that it doesn't have it. You may work on rephrasing it before you turn in the paper, but you should have a working idea of where the paper is going. So if if you're working on a paper, let's say of let's say you're working on a paper. I have a class that is working on a paper about social media, of their ideas about that. I won't go into the whole, long explanation, but let's say that you're working on that paper, and that you have an idea that social media is very beneficial by connecting people with others throughout the globe, right? So that might be something like that, might be your working thesis, right? You don't have it all maybe completely figured out, but you do know that you are taking a position that social media is beneficial. And a way that it's beneficial is that it connects people throughout the world, right? Then you might work on ways that it connects people through the world in your body paragraphs, but you know that you think you have an idea about it, that it is connecting people throughout the world, and that's beneficial, right? That can be your working thesis, right? You basically know where the paper is going. You have your topic and your idea about your topic. So you should be able to look at the document with the workshop that has the information about but I'm going to just try to show this real. I have all kinds of issues with with my easel falling over, but I do have kind of a formula for the thesis statement, that it's your topic plus your idea about your topic. So I'll just point that out really quick. So topic plus idea about topic equals thesis statement. I actually have a mathematical formula for those of you that like math, right? So meaning you need to state your topic in your thesis statement, and you need to state your idea actually in one sentence. So, for example, let's say that, we're back in pre-COVID times. I think we're heading there. We're going to get moving forward in this, right? But let's say you're in class and you had written a draft of your introduction of your paper, and you asked another student, could you look over this for me? And they said, sure. And for whatever reason, I'm going to take us way back to pre-COVID, right? I mean, for whatever reason, there was a fire drill. Remember those, right? So everyone had to leave. But at any rate, the student, for whatever reason, before the fire drill, they only looked at your thesis. They just went right to the bottom and they read your thesis statement, and then the fire drill happened. So they didn't have time to go through the whole intro. they should know what your paper is about just from reading that thesis, that one sentence. So if you have your topic and your idea, they know what it's about. So going back to that example I gave you, if even if all they read was that you think that social media is beneficial because it connects people around the globe, they know what your paper is about, right? That's a good thing. So so it doesn't have to be perfect, but you've got to know the direction your paper is going in, really, before you start getting into the nitty-gritty of the essay. If you don't do that and you just start trying to write the paper, but you're not really sure where you're going, it goes like this, right? And that can be very confusing for you as a writer because you don't know what examples to include and you start packing them in, right? It can be very confusing for the reader. So having that working thesis, it's kind of like if you wanted to get on the freeway, you need to know which direction you are going in order to which freeway you want to get on. So am I going to go to San Francisco today? Well, I need to get on this freeway. If I'm going to go to Sacramento, I need to get on this other freeway, right? So you wouldn't just want to hop on freeways and not have any idea where your destination is, right? That could be super confusing for you. And if you have a passenger, they're going to be really confused. Well, let's hop on this one, zip it along. I have no idea where we're going, but we're going somewhere, right? And like, I don't want to go on this freeway anymore. I'm going to exit out here, right? And the passenger is just like, what on earth? Where are we going? Well, think of your passenger in your car as the reader. They're also like, I'm so confused here. Where are we going, right? So that's why it really, really helps you as a writer, and it really helps your reader to have a working thesis. That is your direction that the paper is going in before you get into the nitty-gritty. I like to develop for the paper what I call a plan of attack. And my plan of attack is a very informal word for an outline, but I have my working thesis, and then I have 3 reasons that I think that, or 3 smaller aspects of that bigger thesis, and that allows me to, again, know the direction that the paper is going in. For example, if going back to that example I gave of the social media paper, if I was writing a paper arguing that social media is beneficial because it connects people around the globe, I might look at aspects of that, smaller aspects that it connects people around the globe. Body paragraph 1 could maybe be on business connections around the globe. A body paragraph 2 might be on developing friendships around the globe. Body paragraph 3 could be on, I can't think of one off the top of my head, but you get the idea, right? Different aspects of that big idea. So that's why you want to have a working thesis. You want to know the direction you're going in, because then you can plan your paper, you can write more effectively. It's much less stressful doing it this way. And for the reader, it's going to read as being much more clear. So, and you might ask, well, can a working thesis change? What if I start working on this and then I change my mind and I decide that, the more research I do, now I don't feel social media is beneficial. I feel like it's problematic. Yes, you can change it because you haven't turned in the paper yet, right? So, that we're good critical thinkers. We can look at issues from different points of view. That's awesome. You just want to get it settled before you turn the paper in, because you have to support your thesis. So the thesis can change, meaning that you've maybe read more research, you've thought about it differently, and you have a new idea. That's fine. Then change the thesis, write the thesis, and then everything in the essay has to support that direction, that new direction. So you don't want to just change it, but have your examples still supporting the old thesis, have your topic sentences still supporting the old thesis. That would be super confusing, right? And it wouldn't help you and it wouldn't help the reader. So you can, until you turn it in, of course, but just make sure that everything has to match. If you think of it like in a matching aspect, everything has to match. Topic sentences have to match thesis. Examples have to match topic sentences and thesis. So it's cohesive in that way. So yes, you can, but just make sure you change everything else too. All right. So I wanted to go over some guidelines for writing a good thesis statement, and go over some what not to do's, and then a few other aspects of thesis statements. So a thesis statement should give a clearly defined idea on some subject. You don't want to be like really vague. Um, none of us intend to be vague, but it can happen. So let's figure out how not to do that, right? You don't want to be overly general. I'll say it that way. Because then the reader is like, they're like this. They're looking at your paper like this. What do you mean? So you don't want to do that to them. They're searching for clues, right? We don't want them searching for clues. We want them to be clear about what sorry, something came unplugged. About what we are saying, right? So it needs to be clearly defined. I'm going to refer to a couple of examples from a writing textbook that I like called Steps to Writing Well by Jean Wyrick. I'll give Miss Jean Wyrick a shout out there. It's a really wonderful book. So I'm just going to use a couple of examples from that book. So here's an example that is not clearly stated. So it's not clearly defined, and subsequently it's rather ineffective. So it says here, here's the example. It says, many people have different opinions on whether people under 21 should be permitted to drink alcohol, and I agree with some of them. So that's rather problematic because we don't know what the writer is saying. We don't know what their idea is. Remember, I said you need topic plus you need idea. We know the topic, which is people drinking alcohol under age 21. But we don't know what the person's idea is. They just said, people have different opinions, right? We know that people have different opinions, but as a reader, we want to know your opinion, right? So you do need to give it, right? So sometimes people feel a little unsure about if they're supposed to do that. You might think, well, I don't want to come across as too opinionated. No, well, in the what not to do part, we're going to talk about not being offensive, but you do need to say your idea, and that is your opinion in this case. So that's we don't want to form it this way. And here's another what not to do. It says for the same topic, the question of whether we need a national law governing the minimum age to drink alcohol is a controversial issue in many states. Yes, so we have a topic, and they said it's controversial. But we still don't know their idea, right? So that could be a sentence coming before the thesis, but it can't be the thesis. You need to tell them what you think. All right, so then it also says, one more here. It says, I want to give my opinion on the national law that sets 21 as the legal age to drink alcohol and why I feel this way. So that's problematic too. We still don't know what they think, right? They say they want to do that, but they're not giving what they think. Before we go into a better version of that, I'm going to tell you a better way to phrase that. I want to touch on that does bring up another issue. The way that particular thesis statement is phrased is what's called an announcement. That it says, I want to do this, I will be doing this in my paper, but you want to avoid that. You want to just say it. Say your idea, right? So I like to think of it as with Nike, right? The Nike ads about just do it, right? So we want to just say it. We want to just do it. Say your idea, right? Don't talk about what you are going to do, right? Like film at 11. No, you want to just say what you need to say, right? Say your idea. Okay, so let's hear about the better way. How did they revise this to have a more effective thesis statement? One way would be to reduce the number of highway fatalities. Our country needs to enforce the national law that designates 21 as the legal minimum age to purchase and consume alcohol. Whoa, that was very effective. So see how they did that? So they're saying that still we have the topic, right? The topic is in there. The topic is the national law that designates 21 as the legal age to purchase and consume alcohol. Got to have the topic. We got that checked. We can check that off, right? And so here's their idea. To reduce the number of highway fatalities, our country needs to enforce the national law. So this person's idea is we have to enforce the law, and they have a particular focus in order to reduce highway fatalities. That's their idea. I'm going to ask you this. Could someone disagree with that idea? Yes. Yes. Maybe the folks that are like, under 21, right? Yes, somebody could disagree with idea. That's good. That's a good thing. If someone can disagree with your thesis, you very well might have a good thesis because it's an idea, it's not a fact. And that means that someone should be able to take a different view of it. So if it is a thesis statement that's for a narrative essay, you might say, well, how could they disagree that in a narrative essay you're telling your personal experience? So you might say, how could they disagree that I learned this lesson, or that this had this effect on me, right? It's not that they're going to disagree that you did this thing or you feel this way. They might have the same experience and have a different idea. I'll give you an example, a recent example. I read an article that was in O Magazine about a year ago, and it talked about the effects of global warming. And it was a narrative essay, and the writer had decided she made a big decision that based on some tragedies in her own life and her concern about the environment, she decided to give up flying in airplanes. I mean, well, how else would you fly, right? Anyway, she decided to give up flying because she felt that it had a very detrimental effect on the environment. And she felt called to make a difference because of like I said, tragedies in her life, her concern about the environment. So she had been someone that had done a lot of flying, and she decided to give this up. Unfortunately, her family lived in another country so far away that this would mean that she was likely to never see her elderly mother again, but she was making that sacrifice. So her thesis statement, it was written in the style of journalism, so not an academic essay, but her thesis statement might be something to the effect of despite the inconveniences to my personal life, in order to protect the environment from further harm, I have decided to give up airline travel, something like that, right? So someone might agree with that decision. Someone else might disagree with that decision, right? It doesn't mean that they disagree that you did that. What it means is that they might have a different response to the same issue. So someone else might feel that they could reduce their air travel, but that they would not want to cut themselves off from seeing their own mother, like an elderly mother that couldn't travel in that case, right? So that's where, again, with a narrative essay, yes, someone should still be able to disagree if it's an idea. It doesn't mean they disagree that you actually did that. It means they might have a different response. Okay, just to be clear on that. So it needs to have a clear idea. All right, so let's go to a different view, but equally effective thesis statement on the same topic of alcohol and whether it should be consumed by those under 21. This one says the legal minimum age for purchasing alcohol should be 18 rather than 21. All right, so this is a much different phrasing than the one we just looked at. It's effective. It has the topic, right? And so let's look at this really one more time. I'm going to say it. The legal minimum age for purchasing alcohol. That's the topic. Straightforward, right? Should be 18 rather than 21. Boom, right? It's effective. They give their topic. They give their idea. They will develop their reasons in their topic sentences in their essay. They will explain it in their intro. They will develop it in their essay. So it's also effective. So I wanted to give you those two very different ways of structuring a thesis statement on the same topic that are both effective. So one check that you can do, like I said, if you like math, you could check your work, yeah, right? It's like there's a formula. You can check to make sure your thesis statement, do I have my topic? Or is my topic only in the intro but not in my thesis? Or is my topic just in a title, but it's not really in my intro or my thesis? That's a big problem. check your work. Check to make sure your thesis statement has your topic. Make sure it has your idea. Okay, so so again, we have to have a clearly defined idea. We have to say it clearly because the reader needs that clarity. All right, and so the other thing is a good thesis statement should have one main idea, not two. So sometimes we can get so into this idea, the idea of ideas, that we have more than one idea in the thesis. You can't do that. It's like trying to ride two horses. Very uncomfortable and stresses the horses out too. So don't do that, right? So you need one idea because otherwise the reader is like this. They're reading your thesis and they're going, wait, where are we going, right? So it's like, yeah, you can't do that. You need one central idea. You can have what they call like an essay mount thesis, where you have like three related ideas, like three smaller ideas that all, relate to a bigger idea. Like you list your three aspects that are going to be in your topic sentences in your thesis. You can do that. But just two big ideas in the same thesis, no. It turns out that you as a writer are kind of just all over the place trying to pack it all in to support these two different ideas, and your reader's super confused. So I'll give you an example on that too, what not to do. That it says, here's a what not to do example. The proposed no smoking ordinance in our town will violate a number of our citizens' civil rights, and no one has proved that secondhand smoke is dangerous anyway. All right, so we've got a topic about the no smoking ordinance, okay? So we have that. But listen again, one more time, I'm going to read it and see if you can pick out the two ideas here. The proposed no smoking ordinance in our town will violate a number of our citizens' civil rights, and no one has proved that secondhand smoke is dangerous anyway. So this writer has, he or she does have that topic said very clearly, but violating civil rights is one main idea, and this issue with that no one has proved that secondhand smoke, according to them, is dangerous. That's another idea. Two main ideas in the same thesis. Super confusing, so don't do that. Better, you could have the same point of view, really, and you could have the same topic, but more clearly stated. The proposed no smoking ordinance in our town will violate our civil rights. Just pick one. Pick what you have the most to say about. Or if you like the other one better, the most recent U.S. Health Department studies claiming that secondhand smoke is dangerous to non-smokers is based on faulty research. That's the other idea, right? But just one. Just pick one main idea. All right, so the other another issue of that with thesis statements, that you should look to having something. It needs to be clearly stated, and it needs to be your original idea. And so you want to avoid the use of cliches, which are like overused phrases, and not really your original idea. It should be your original phrasing. So for example, you shouldn't be putting a quote in your thesis statement, because you can use quotes in your essay, of course, and you would say where they came from and you would cite them, but your thesis statement has to be your original phrasing. So it can't be a quote from someone, and it also can't be a cliche. So again, an overused phrase such as, dogs have always been man's best friend. That cannot be your thesis statement. No, no, no. It's a cliche. It's an overused phrase that people say, but if you need to say it in your words, right? And also, it's rather vague. So from reading that thesis statement, the reader has this cliche, but they don't know what you're writing about dogs and friendship. So if you need to have your original idea about dogs and friendship with humans, and it also needs to be more specific. That's rather broad. What do you want to talk about dogs and humans? I think this writer needs to brainstorm a little bit further and find out what is their idea that they have about dogs and humans, and it needs to be your original idea. All right. So similarly, you would also not want to say this as your thesis statement. Friendship is a wonderful thing. Okay, but it's too broad. It's too like vague. Like what is wonderful about it, right? So how about this? Instead of friendship is a wonderful thing, friendship is essential for healthy mental health, or yeah, friendship is essential for not healthy mental health. That sounds a bit repetitive, but how about friendship is essential for good mental health? Something like that, right? So we know we're talking about friendship, and in this case, the writer is going to talk about why friendship is good for mental health rather than friendship is a wonderful thing. It's too vague, right? So you need to be more specific than that. All right. So the other thing is that it says a good thesis statement is designed to fit the assignment, meaning that it kind of segues off the last point, that you want it to be not so broad that it's you could write 50 pages on it when all you are supposed to do is write 5 pages on it, right? And it just needs to be focused. That's another way to say it, focused. So for example, if you were writing a paper on the issue of nuclear power, this would be a rather problematic thesis, and I'll explain why. So it says nuclear power should be banned as an energy source in this country. So you might say, well, what's wrong with that? Look, they've got their topic, right? Nuclear power. They have their idea that it should be banned. That's pretty clear. And you even said about the disagreement issue, someone could disagree with that. So it looks like a good thesis. But it's too big. It's big, big, big. It's big. So when you have it like that, it becomes unwieldy. Like you're trying to pack in everything you can find about why nuclear power should be banned in this case, right? I mean, you could write a book on that, right? So, but you don't have time to write a book. You have a 5-page paper to write, right? So, and the reader is like this, trying to make sense of it, right? So, no, instead, just get focused. So, for example, if you were out um, looking at wild animals and you wanted to take a picture of an elephant. So there you are. All you have is your phone. You're going to take that picture, but you can't get the elephant all in, and they just don't always listen to our directions. Elephant, excuse me, could you like move a little this way? I'm trying to fit you in. So instead, though, because you can't get the whole elephant in effectively, and it's you could though take a really good picture perhaps of the elephant's face, and so the viewer that sees your picture afterwards is going to go, oh my gosh, that's such a great picture of that elephant, and I really see the expression on his face, and I just really want to help elephants now. I mean, so, but if you just have this like blurry picture of like an elephant and, like it was just kind of his side and you're trying to get him all in, it wouldn't be as effective, right? So, same thing, right? Same idea. You want to focus in, and then the reader will get that focused thesis is an aspect of the whole big issue. So I'll give you an example. Again, this is from this book that I like, that it says, because of its poor safety record during the past 2 years, the Collin County nuclear power plant should be closed. They're taking one aspect of nuclear power. They still have the same idea. The reader that reads this would understand that safety issues pertaining to one nuclear power plant can relate to the overall issue as a whole, but it's going to be a lot more less stressful for you to write to find the problems with this particular power plant than it is to have every aspect of nuclear power, right? All right, so, and it's going to be much more clear for the reader to read, right? So, and it doesn't mean that you can't take on controversial issues if that is your paper assignment, but it just means that it needs to be focused, all right? It's more effective that way. For example, I once had a paper topic that I can't remember the exact prompt. This was some years ago, but it had something to do with the aspect of war. And I had a student that was an excellent student, and she was very dedicated, but her initial thesis got a little bit away from her, and it was something to the effect of war is like devastating for those involved or something like that. And that was a good start because she had a topic and she had an idea, but it was a bit broad like this is. And so when she was trying to do her research, it was really overwhelming because she had, if you were to look into all the ways that war is devastating, of course, that is really there's a lot of devastation from of war, and she was trying to cover it all, right? But it was rather overwhelming, and was kind of going all over the place. So, meanwhile, I had a student on the same topic that her thesis statement was something to the effect of that the United States did not offer enough supportive resources to soldiers returning home from war. Same topic, not looking at every aspect of it, but looking at this aspect of it. And so it was that was much less stressful for her because she knew what to research, which was research concerning resources in our country, in the United States, about um, about soldiers returning home from war, right, supporting her thesis, right, and it was very effective. For the reader, that's also very effective, and it's very focused, and they understand the broader implications from reading your very focused thesis. All right. So you do want to, again, say your thesis in specific terms, and and I know these are related but slightly different, so I'm just going to give you a couple examples of what not to do in regards to that. This says what not to do. The women's movement is good for our country. So what women's movement? There is more than one a group that promotes equal opportunity for women, right? So, and good is really vague. So we need to get a bit more specific than good. So, for example, this example says that more effective, the Colorado Women's Party is working to ensure the benefits of equal pay for equal work for both males and females in our state. So, more effective, we know which women's group. We know what they're doing and why it's effective is a more specific word. All right, where should you put your thesis statement? So your thesis statement in almost every case should be in paragraph 1. Paragraph 1. There may be some circumstances, if you had to write a very long paper, longer paper, at least 10 to 12 pages, that you may need to give some background about the situation first and then go into your thesis statement in paragraph 2. It's still more common, even with a longer paper, to have the thesis statement in paragraph 1. But for example, let's say you're writing a history paper on the American Revolution and you needed to give some specifics of background about that in paragraph 1 and then go into your idea in paragraph 2. Of all the papers I've ever written, I can only think of one that I did that I had to do that, and it was about the transcendentalists, and there was some background situation I had to give in the first paragraph related to transcendentalism, and then my thesis was in the second paragraph. Only one I can think of was that one. Otherwise, it was always even with those long papers, it was always in paragraph 1. So in most cases, almost every case, 3 to 5 page paper, paragraph 1. Thesis should be in paragraph 1. And let me give you one other thing. You should know what sentence is your thesis statement in paragraph 1. Like, you should make a decision about it. Before you turn in the paper, you should know that's the one. It is that sentence. That is my thesis. You should not feel like, please let there be a thesis statement in here. I hope it's in here. I'm turning this paper in, please. No, I can tell you seriously, if you feel that way, it's almost always not there at all, right? So you shouldn't be just like, you should know that's it. I'm committed to it. Very traditionally, your thesis statement is the last sentence in your in the first paragraph of your introduction. Like, you explain everything, you explain the issue, give the background, thesis statement at the end. Very common. Common because it's effective. There may be other circumstances that it might not be the last, but it's very common to have it as the last. So here, if you, like a lot of folks, struggle with thesis statements, what I would do is I would do the traditional things. Get all your structure in place so you know how to manage it before you're, doing different things. So I would just put it as my last sentence, honestly, and then it's there and you're good, right? All right, very good. So I want to go over now some issues to avoid in thesis statements. So these are common issues that come up that you want to avoid to set yourself up for success. So don't, again, I mentioned this before, I'm going to talk about a little more specifically now. Don't make your thesis statement just an announcement, like, that here's what you're going to do. So I'm going to give you some common phrasing for that so that you can, avoid doing that. So it says, don't do this. The subject of my essay is my experience with a pet boa constrictor. Okay, that's a problem on a lot of levels. We do have a topic. We know that the paper will be about the pet boa constrictor. We don't know the writer's idea. So again, if you check your work and you need a topic and you need an idea, we don't have the idea. We only have a topic. But don't say what you will do. Here is what I will do. No, got to go Nike with this. Just do it, right? Just say what you need to say, right? So you don't want to say, here's what I will be doing, right? So that it's ineffective. It can be confusing for the reader. So again, it says a poor way to phrase this. I'm going to discuss boa constrictors as pets, right? Again, we have the topic, but we have no idea what their idea is. There's no idea listed, right? So that will save you a lot of trouble if you do check for those two things. Check for topic and check for idea. But again, you're saying, here's what I'm going to do. So avoid that. Instead, much more effectively, boa constrictors do not make healthy indoor pets. That's another example that is effective, because now we've got the topic, boa constrictors. We've got this person's idea that they do not make healthy indoor pets. Can someone disagree with that? Yes, of course. The folks that have the pet boa constrictors, right? So that would be effective, right? All right, very good. So then, secondly, what to avoid? You want to avoid saying things like, in my opinion, I believe, that sort of thing. The thesis statement is assumed to be your opinion and your idea. You don't need to tell the reader that. And in fact, what that does is it makes you seem hesitant. It makes you seem overly shy. It makes you seem like you're really not that confident about your idea. And I don't think that's intended. I think, in fact, what this comes from is trying to be polite. And it is good to be polite, right? Polite is good. But in this case, it makes you seem like, well, in my opinion, like I don't know, I'm kind of scared to say my opinion, right? So instead of doing that, you just come on out and say it, right? Just stand strong in this way, right? So I'll give you an example, what not to do and then how to do it. So don't do this. My opinion is that the federal government should devote more energy to solar energy research. More energy? I mean, more money. More energy. Okay, let me say that again. My opinion is that the federal government should devote more money to solar energy research, right? So we're saying my opinion says that, but we need to just come on out and say it. So instead, if you just said this, the federal government should devote more energy to solar. Oh my gosh, I did it again. The federal government should devote more money to solar energy research. All right. So yeah, I hope that was clear, right? You want to have your topic and you want to have your idea about the topic, right? So just really straightforward. All right. So then you also don't want to do this. My thesis states that the federal government should devote more money to solar energy research. Okay, so again, you're just saying what it states, right? That sort of thing. You want to avoid that. All right, so also, in this essay, I will present lots of reasons why horse racing should be abolished in Texas. No, just come on out and say it. Horse racing should be abolished in Texas. Boom, right? So you gotta kind of like just come on out. Don't be shy, right? All right, so but on the flip side of this is that you don't want to be unreasonable. You don't want to be offensive and offend your reader. So you don't want to call them names or anything of that nature, right? You don't want to insult them. So it's a fine line that we walk. I just said that you don't have to be, shy, but on the other hand, you don't want to be offensive. For example, here's what not to do. Radical religious fanatics across the nation are trying to impose their right-wing views by censoring high school library books. Yikes! Don't do that. Okay, so don't call people names. Don't call people, in this case, radical religious fanatics. So don't call people fanatics. Nobody wants to be called a fanatic, right? So if you're like, well, wait a minute, I thought that's what, that's what their view is or whatever, call them what they want to be called. What do they identify themselves as? In this case, it might be like conservative or something like that, but you don't, don't call people names. All right. So instead, better, you can have your viewpoint. You just have to say it with a little diplomacy, right? So only local school board members, not religious leaders or parents, should decide which books high school libraries should offer. Wow, it's the same idea. It's effective. You have a topic, you have an idea, but it's not offensive, right? So here's another one, flip side of that. Don't do this. This is exactly the opposite view, but it's also offensive. Too many corrupt books in our high school libraries selected by liberal atheistic educators are undermining the morals of our youth. Oh, yikes, don't say that either. So don't call people names, right? So in this case, they're being called liberal atheistic educators. Yikes! So much more effective, let's do it this way. To ensure that high school libraries contain books that reflect community standards, parents should have a voice in selecting new titles. All right, so it's the same idea, but without the name calling, right? So just think of it this way. Have a spirit of goodwill in your thesis. And you don't, if the other folks, they just have a different opinion. They're very nice people, I'm sure, right? But if they read your paper and your thesis and you present it with a spirit of goodwill, you could even change their mind, right? Even if you don't change their mind, they'll at least acknowledge perhaps that you have a good point. But if you're insulting them and calling them names, they're not even going to read the paper. I can tell you, they're going to stop right there, right? So you have no chance to convince them of your ideas, right? So just, goodwill, spirit of goodwill. They're just people with a different opinion. They're intelligent people. They just have a different opinion than you, and just kind of keep that in mind. All right. So the other thing is that I'm going to just cover two more things before we wrap it up. So the thesis statement is a statement that has to be a statement that ends in a period, not a question. It can't be a question. You can use a question in your introduction to get the reader thinking. That's fine. But not your thesis statement. Your thesis statement must be a statement, a sentence that ends in a period, not a question mark. If you have a question as your thesis statement, it's like you're asking the reader to write your thesis statement for you. Not their job, your job. So it has to be a statement, ends in a period. The other thing is it can't just be a fact. It needs to be an idea. So for example, going back to, the example about the environment that I was talking about in an earlier example, if you had something like the one about plane travel, airplane travel can have an effect on our environment. That's more of a fact because you can support that with evidence, but it's not a thesis statement because we don't know what your ideas or what you're doing about it or what you want me to do about it or anything, right? So it can't just be a fact. It has to be an idea, a clear idea. So just make sure that it isn't just a fact. All right. So then I had one more point I wanted to go over, and this is my example about. If you have ever heard of the show Clifford the Big Red Dog, it's on PBS, that it's a children's show, and they're based on the books Clifford the Big Red Dog. So how many of you are familiar with Clifford? So if not, if you're like, I have no idea what you're talking about right now, Clifford in both the books and the TV show is a giant red dog and owned by this little girl named Emily, right? So, and she's like, whoa, like you guys are like, where are we going with this? So I have a point here regarding thesis statements. So hang in there with me on this. So if you were to look at the PBS children's show, they have Clifford's big idea of the day, right? So and that big idea would be a theme. And then, for example, Clifford's big idea of the day might be sharing. Then every aspect of every different smaller episode that's about that, that's in that day's program would be about sharing. Maybe sharing with friends. Emily and the friends are sharing and Clifford sharing with them. Maybe one is about sharing with family, etc., right? So your 2 points about this regarding thesis statements. Your thesis statement is like Clifford's big idea, right? So it is your big idea of the paper. Your thesis statement is your big idea of the paper. Then your body paragraphs are smaller aspects that support that big idea, just like Clifford's big idea about sharing. And then we have an episode that deals with sharing with friends. We might have another one that deals with sharing with family, etc. But they all connect with the big idea of the importance of sharing, right? So it has to be your big idea of the paper. The other point I want to make about Clifford is he's a big dog, right? He's a big dog. And the thesis statement, if you can think about it that way, it's your big dog idea. And that's why it needs to be clear and focused and specific, because it is your big dog idea. And that's why you should know which one it is in your paragraph 1 intro, because it's your big dog idea. So you got to know which one it is. Otherwise, you probably don't have a big dog idea yet, right? So that's my Clifford example. All right, so I want to just wrap this up with so again, thesis statement, paragraph 1 normally needs to be your topic plus your idea about your topic, needs to be phrased in specific terms. You should know which sentence it is. It's usually going to be your last. And just make sure to kind of that you know what direction that you're going with the paper. So have that working thesis, that's going to help you know what direction to go in. It'll help the reader to be with you on that direction for a successful paper. Thank you so much.